Stephen, congratulations on that result. How does that one feel? Was that perhaps one of the more professional performances in recent weeks?
Yeah, when you play against good sides, you know it's going to be tough work. They deal with the ball very well. They move the ball. They're very good in 1v1 situations. So, coming into today's game, I suppose the message was that you'll have to look after your own individual battle. Fullbacks are going to have to defend 1v1 at times. Centre halves will have to defend 1v1. Wingers are going to have to chase back. So it was more about the work ethic first and foremost. And because we only played them about 3-4 weeks ago, we kind of freshened our mind of how we had to go about it. So the intensity was better. I thought we squeezed the game better first half in particular. It's almost just set a little marker down that when you play against good sides, you have to close the gap. And it's a little taster before the cup game in the start of April. So we'll sit and look at it again and see where we went. What worked for us, what went well, what didn't. How we can improve, and that's the key aspect. It was hard work, but it's good when you win, and it makes all the hard work worthwhile.
One of the things we always speak about is the amount of goals that your boys have been scoring, but keeping a clean sheet, that was an impressive thing tonight. What did you make of the defensive performance?
Yeah, well, it's been disappointing over the past few weeks. The amount of goals we've conceded. I feel as if a lot of the goals we've conceded are preventable. I know all managers say that, but there's been a lot of individual errors. So, without trying to set people too many targets throughout games, it's almost to just limit your mistakes, if not try and make any. Just simplify your game at times. Don't get caught up trying to do silly things. If it's not on to play, it's not on to play. If it is and you can take a touch, fine. So that was pleasing. I thought David Ferguson was terrific tonight. Up against good players. They're strong, they run hard. Barry, being efficient. Barry's had a couple of little mishaps in the last few weeks, and he was the one probably I spoke to most and said, listen, let's simplify your game, be a defender first and foremost. If it's not on, clear your lines, and then we'll try and rebuild his game from there effectively. So, it was tough. We played them down at Dumbarton, and the amount of chances they created, they didn't create an awful lot tonight. Yes, they had a few. Then you hit the post first half. So, overall pleased with the work ethic, but the clean sheet and probably more the determination not to concede also helps.
Alan Campbell came back into the team. He'd been out for a couple of games, obviously, with the first team and everything like that. Just what does he bring back to the team? Were you happy to have him back? Yeah,
he just brings a little bit of stability, first and foremost. He's got a real good defensive brain in his mind. He senses danger. He puts himself in good positions. He uses his body very well. Of course, when he lands on the ball at times, he'll probably feel he can do better. That's just part of his game he has to improve on, which will keep getting better. But just his determination in midfield to go and break play up, and then just to simplify his game. He's such a competitor in there. There's not very many other players like him at the club, just because of his whole competitive nature. So he loves the challenge, he loves getting about the pitch. It's good for him to be playing again. He hasn't played a lot of football in the last kind of month. So, it's good that, James is here and Stephen Robinson's here, just to have a little look and see what Alan can do and what he's all about. And see when he's ready for the step up. So it's also good to see Bowie getting some game time. Elliot as well, after the game in Aberdeen for the first team, he hasn't really had a sniff. I know he got on Saturday, but just almost trying to rebuild him again as well, and just give him some game time. He gets brought down for the penalty, which is the crucial moment in the game. You're an attacking player, you're judged on what you do at the top end of the pitch, and Elliot, one little bit of magic, gets a penalty and we win the game. So pleased all round.
You touched nicely on the fact that this is a little taster for the cup coming up, of course. Is it more than that, Craigs? Does this give a bit of a confidence boost as well, or what do you think on that?
Well, I hope it gives them a little bit of belief that they can beat them. We haven't been very successful against Celtic over the past couple of years I've been involved. They do have the best players at their age. You can see the physical prowess of them, their running power, they're good on the ball. So to close that gap first and foremost, you have to match that intensity of how they play. As I said earlier, you can't do it for 90 minutes. But you have to pick and choose when you do it. Players have to understand the roles. I felt they did that tonight. Of course, you drop off later in the game because you're a little bit fatigued. They go a little bit more direct at times. Just to try and mix their game up, they changed their shape to 3-5-2. I've just matched up right away with them just to try and simplify our players' game. So I hope it gives them a little bit of belief. It probably wasn't our most polished performance in the second half. I think we can deal with the ball better. But if anything, we've learned that we can compete with them, but also for the players what they have to do to compete with them. And that's almost like if you could just bottle that and pour that into a wee glass of water just before they play them next time, just to remember. So that's our job, is to make sure they remember how they beat them, why they beat them, and what went well.
And just finally, Craigs, after what's been a fairly difficult run in terms of results, just how good is that at this stage of the season, considering levelling points with Celtic before tonight as well, and still in the hunt for the title?
Well, yeah, hunt for the title. That's maybe a little bit far, but who knows? We're here. I think we've done well. We had a good spell over Christmas and New Year. Just into the New Year, we won 4 or 5 in a row. Then we've had a little sticky spell. So it's the inconsistency of the team. That's the hard bit, Lewis. Whenever there's 4 or 5 changes per game, different personnel coming in, it can upset the rhythm of the game. It can upset the rhythm of the players. But the message I've tried to give them over the last kind of couple of weeks is that okay, the personnel may change, but your role in the team doesn't change. If you're a full-back, you still have to deal with the ball and defend 1v1. If you're a striker, you still have to hold it up. You know, link-up play maybe isn't as good, just because it's, you know, they haven't played together before. Some of them haven't played together in the same positions, but they still have to look after their own game. So even though the personnel changes in the team, they must look after their own part of the game, and I felt tonight we did.
Well, thanks again as always, Craig.
Cheers.